Hello indulgers, assalamu alaikum. Welcome once again to Ramadan with Iti. Today we're making the ultimate puff puff, golden, fluffy and absolutely irresistible. Whether you're craving something sweet or a classic street food treat, this recipe is foolproof and goes so well with your household cookbook. To get the bowl rolling, we're going to start by adding our warm water and part of our sugar into a mixing bowl. Add your yeast and stir and set it aside to allow that yeast to activate. You know your yeast is activated once you see a great deal of aeration and bubbles on the top of the surface. Next up, we're going to add our flour, followed by the remainder of that sugar, some salt, some nutmeg, and don't forget that vanilla essence. It really does leave an extra touch and makes a difference. For the detailed recipe as well as all the listed measurements and ingredients, visit my website indulgewithiti.com. Just search puff puff and the recipe will be available for your viewing. Once your ingredients are all inside the same bowl, go ahead and stir your dough. At first it appears to be very dry, but with a bit more elbow grease and kneading, you'll have a very thick consistency. Give it some time, knead the dough for about 8 to 10 minutes until you develop some gluten and some pull. Drop a comment in the comment section to let me know where you are watching from and whether or not you have something similar to puff puff in your country. In West Africa, puff puff is known also as beignet in francophone countries. In Ghana, it's known as buffloaf or buffrot, which is very similar to puff puff with slight variations with the ingredients and sometimes preparation process. But generally speaking, I know of mandazi in East Africa, which is infused with cardamom and other spices. If you have something similar from your country, let us know in the comments and let's get interacting. Once your dough has come together, dip your hands in some water and go ahead and clean the sides of the bowl. You don't want to waste any of that delicious dough. The more dough, the more amazing puff puff we get to make. So go ahead and do that without using too much water, because excessive water will actually change the consistency of your dough. So go ahead and cover your dough and allow it to rest and rise for about 1 hour or more depending on the climate. I made this in the summertime in Melbourne, so 1 hour was just right to allow my dough to beautifully rise. Once it's risen, you're going to want to get in there with your hands and remove as much air as possible. This part is so much fun. The dough is beautifully elastic and look at that go. So stretchy and perfect and ready for frying. So before we get to frying, we want to heat up our oil in a deep pan at medium heat until it reaches about 175 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You could use a spoon or your hands, which is even better, to scoop or drop down your batter into the hot oil. There's a special technique to this and it does take practice, but start by wetting your hands and scooping a bit of your dough in your palm and then squeeze that dough out between the curve between your index finger and your thumb. Drop your batter into the hot oil and fry it in batches, making sure that you are turning them occasionally for about 3 to 4 minutes until golden and beautifully fluffy and soft on the inside. The best time to consume puff puff is right out of the oil when it's beautifully warm and fragrant. So if you're going to make this during Ramadan, make sure you leave sufficient time to do this right before iftar. Control the heat at all times because puff puff has a tendency of browning on the outside really quickly while the inside is still wet and soggy. So maintain a medium heat at all times to ensure that you have the most fluffy puff puff right in the center. Go ahead and drain your puff puff into a strainer or using a paper towel. Make these delicious puff puff for your next family gathering, iftar, or perhaps you're going to be catering for a wedding and you can add these puff puff alongside your small chops. Be sure to check out my Ramadan playlist on YouTube where I've shared loads of recipes like hausa koko, kunun konwa, fura, lamunjin, sobolo and much more. All of these will go so well with puff puff and inshallah I'll see you all soon in the next episode of Iftar with Iti. Ramadan